Welcome to Sport Climbing 101.
Hi, my name's Ryan, and this is How Not To.
And I'm Ben from YouTube channel How How Not To Hard is Easy. And we're doing it again. And I'm Ben, and I have a YouTube channel called Hard is Easy. And today, my goal is to prove to you that sport climbers are not crazy adrenaline-seeking junkies, and you don't have to be a crazy athlete to start sport climbing.
I can't do it. That's so bad. I'm just peeling out of this thing and my toes are just curling harder. We hope that this video helps you when you do go with someone who knows what they're doing, identify what you're looking at, ask good questions to them, and be able to know and identify whether or not they're teaching you correct stuff because you've seen a different perspective. Please don't go out on your own after watching two guys you don't know on the internet show you how to do it. Let's start with where to find friends. Where do you even find climbers?
The best place to start is to go to the climbing gym, and somebody will definitely take care of you.
Yeah, you can learn top roping there, you can learn lead climbing there, and you're very likely to find somebody else who likes climbing there.
And it's very likely that you will make friends, even if you're very socially awkward. Because climbers are
sometimes socially awkward, and that's okay. Once you start going outside, you might meet people here at the crag that you start talking to, and then you climb the next day, and you can create friendships there. Basically, just start climbing. Now, whether or not they're qualified, well, maybe you're both learning together. That's how me and my buddy did it. And ideally, you go with someone who's better at you because you will progress faster if they are better.
Another option would be to find climbing hostels in popular climbing destinations and go there and make friends. And also there is a lot of guided courses that you will find in those places. So you can jump on one of the courses, make friends, and start from there.
Yeah, if you don't know anybody and you want to go out, pay a guide. I mean, support the guiding community as well, because they provide a huge value to the community, and it's nice, like, you're the customer. It's nice when you support them. Where do you find routes if you aren't familiar with climbing?
So there is websites online where you can find different destinations to climb. One of them is 8a.nu. Another is that I prefer using, thecrag.com, and it has a map with a lot of spots to climb and routes marked there, so it's quite easy. Even if you're living somewhere and you're wondering, is there any climbing around me, and you don't know, you can go to that website and you can check if there is actually outside climbing around you.
Another popular one that I really like is Mountain Project. And if you go to the route guide, you can go to the area that you want to climb, and then you can filter from there. It's got the general area, which is really nice. And if you want to filter it, you can just go from the sport climbing from 5.7 to 5.10. Here's an easy 5.7. It tells you if there's any closures. It's got the description, the protection, and typically it has a whole bunch of photos that really help.
Let's say you found a place to go, like we are today in Tenerife at the crag. How do you know what to climb? And the answer is to buy or borrow from somebody a guidebook. It's a book, also called a topo, which has all the routes marked, and you know what's the difficulty of the route. So when you're standing in front of the rock, you're not guessing, will I make to the top or no? You will know how hard that thing is.
So can you explain the grades that you might find in a topo book? What is easy if you're new, and what's like really hard, and what's the hardest out there today?
So by grades, he means the difficulty of the route, and depending on the area you go, the grading system might differ. Europe or some other parts of the world where we have so-called French grading system, which is usually 5A, 5B, 5C, then you have 6A, 6B, 6C, and then you have intermediate grades, which can be 6B plus.
You can see on the Yosemite decimal system that we use in the States that it's just 5.2, 5.3, 5.4. Until you get to 5.10 is when we have the A, B, C, and in our case, a D. And you can see on this chart how they compare to the French grading system.
But it's very subjective to each area. A 5.7 in Yosemite can be very difficult for somebody who sport climbs a 5.7 somewhere else. So here I was on a 6B yesterday, but I have led much more respectably a 10 in Yosemite because it was a finger crack, and I'm used to cracks more than I'm used to face climbing.
The grades depend on where you are and also on the style of the climb. Somebody might be very good at so-called slabby climbs that are positively leaning, and
some of us really like cracks.
So the slabby climbs require more balance, more technical skills involved, And other climbs that get more overhanging require more strength, and one might suit you better than other.
Don't always go from like a 5'11" in a climbing gym and think you're going to be doing 5'11s outside.
It depends where you go climbing. In some climbing destinations, they are known for vacation grading, and they tend to have softer grading where you will feel better going on vacation there, and other places will make you feel like you suck. And neither is true. It's just very subjective, and you should seek for fun, not for grades.
How hard's the climb you did in the movie that you made?
That one was 7C+, and the one before I did was 8A.
Is that your PR?
Yeah, that's my breaking limit.
PR is personal record.
So basically the goal is to climb from start of the route to the end of the route without resting or using any gear to pull yourself up. And that's what we called ascend. In the beginning, I wouldn't worry about that. I would just go and try to get to the top on whatever it's fun for you and try another thing to get to the top.
But if you can't, that's normal, and you just keep working on it and until you get to the top. And it's pretty rewarding if you've worked on it for a while and then get there. You're like, wah!
Yeah. In the beginning, most of the people tend to just climb a lot of stuff and don't worry about red pointing, and that's where I was as well. And then at some point you naturally transition to liking the harder challenges, and to challenge yourself you need to try harder things, and then you get into the projecting process of the route. So let's start by killing the gear fear first.
Let's start with harnesses. Now these are just standard climbing harnesses. They're different than an arborist harness or a caving harness, and what kind of makes them what they are is you have a waist belt, and then you have 2 leg loops that come to the same point where you have a single loop called the belay loop. Now, in some climbing gyms, this all kind of gets sewn into one master point. You don't really want to buy one of those. You want to buy one that has an actual belay loop. This one is an ultralight harness, and you don't really want that because you might be sitting in it for a while as you're projecting. This one's more of a medium. That looks like that's a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, this is a comfort harness. So the common question is like, which is the best? Unfortunately, there isn't really the best. There is a lot of great, which is great. Maybe you don't want to buy ultra thin harnesses because sitting in them is not as comfortable as sitting in more cushion harnesses.
Definitely not.
More cushioned harnesses are slightly heavier, but you're not gonna feel that whatsoever, especially in the beginning of your climbing journey. So I wouldn't go into like crazy ultra lightweight harnesses.
You don't need the $120 harness. How strong is this?
Wow, you tell me how strong this is. You broke a lot of belay loops.
That was just as strong as the fat ones.
That is wild how that ripped. And that's pretty good.
Stronger than your back. Your back apparently breaks around 7 kilonewtons, I think.
So there was a study done on this where we tested on paratroopers to see what force to the body will cause damage, and it was around 12 kilonewtons.
A lot of force, by the way.
Yeah. When we are sport climbing, you rarely go above 3.5 or 4 kilonewtons to the harness.
So our gear is rated in kilonewtons, or KN, and that is a measurement of force, not weight, because if my weight is falling, I'm going to generate a lot more force than if I'm just hanging there. Now, we've both measured forces of people falling, typically in like a gym climbing fall, and we've both found that around 3 kilonewtons, rarely 4, will a person see when they're being belayed, starting on the ground, they go up and they fall.
I hit 1.14.
I got 2.64, 4.27.
And that's really great to know when you put this into comparison to how much this gear actually can withstand.
2, 1, loose. Oh shit! Oh shit! 444. Oh. 716.
And Ryan is breaking a lot of gear on this channel.
You have broken things in your ceiling before trying to measure force.
Ouch!
So the harness is stronger than your back. But you know what's not stronger than your back? Your head. So let's talk about helmets.
Hey, I'm new to climbing. Do you have anything cool here?
Welcome to HowNotTo.com, where we have all the Quickdraws you would need, a ton of harnesses, any rope that you might need, and a bunch of stick clips. No one sponsors this channel, and what makes this possible to put this much work into a video like this is when you sponsor us by getting your gear at hownotto.com. We also have a ton of helmets, and we're going to get into that next. You could hit your head on a rock when you fall, or a rock could hit your head if you're just standing there. Or if your leader is going like this and they drop something, that would hurt without a helmet. And so there are a couple different helmets, and this is an all plastic helmet. I believe yours is halfy and heavy. What do you got here?
Yeah, it's a half foam and the top is covered with more durable.
You have a whole
material.
video that talks about plastic versus foam and the pros and cons.
Yeah.
What's a short summary of that?
A short summary that if you're looking for a helmet for sport climbing, you want more like a hybrid, like where there is more foam, more ventilation, because when you climb it gets hot. Also, more sport climbing oriented helmets are lighter, and you want to have a helmet that you put on your head and you forget about it, so it doesn't bother you.
You can get away with not wearing a helmet, just like you can with a seatbelt in a car, but only so long. Like if you have an accident, you know, that's a problem.
Actually, it's quite common. People ask me, why do these professionals don't wear helmets, or why so many people don't wear helmets? I believe
Complacency.
I believe this comes from a feeling when if you just go climbing for, let's say, few weeks, a year, chances are you won't see rock falling. But this is all comes down to chances. Even today, we were just standing there and some rock fell behind us. I've seen so much rock fall when I started climbing more and more often. And then I climbed pretty much every second or every third day for many years in a row. I've seen so much rock falls. I broke so many rocks and it fell close to my belayers. What? It survived! Another reason is when you climb, if you flip upside down, you will hit your head, and then you want to hit your helmet, not your head.
I wonder what kind of sound it makes. It makes like does it make a bonk sound? Or is it like a hollow, like nothing's inside my head sound?
And even the most professional climbers who you will see climbing without helmets, they do flip upside down. I witnessed so many of them flipping upside down that it makes me want to wear a helmet even more.
Your video actually made me start to wear my helmet more. Like, it made more awareness about it.
That's a smelly piece of rubber called a climbing shoe.
There are different varieties of climbing shoes. Some look like the way your foot was never meant to be, and apparently that helps you edge better. If you like to be comfortable all day and put your foot in cracks, you can have a more comfortable shoe, and I even wear these with socks. Don't judge me. Tighter the shoe, technically the better you can have control of things, but the more uncomfortable you will be. I assume you wear a tight shoe if you're climbing 8s.
So you might come across to people saying that you need to buy a really tight shoe. It needs to hurt when you put your feet into the shoe. Yeah. Don't do that. I've done this, many do that. First reason, and very important reason, if it hurts, your body will naturally tame down your power output. And that's true. If something is hurting somewhere in your body, you have less overall power. So you don't want something terribly hurting. Yeah. And when you are just the beginner of climbing, especially like that super tight shoe will not give you any benefits. You will be, ow, 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 it hurts. So don't do that.
You don't want your foot swimming inside of your shoe. You want it to be firm. Just make it super comfortable enough.
My rule when I'm buying shoes now is to put a new shoe on and walk in a climbing shop for 5 minutes. If I can walk in a climbing shoe for 5 minutes without needing to rip my shoe off and throw out, then chances are once that shoe will soften, it's gonna be perfect. If you need to rip the shoe in like a couple of seconds out of trying it, you're up for the trouble long term.
TC Pros were like super popular, and I tried them and they were not comfortable for me. And so I just went back to my Mythos. This has been great for me for crack climbing, which is mostly what I do. I can stick my foot in and wear these all day on long routes and it works. And so I've just stuck with these for a long time. And other people have these really aggressive shoes if they're bouldering, and you can have something in between.
Yeah, typically for bouldering and sport climbing, you can have the same shoe. Hardcore boulderers usually have a shoe which has more rubber at the top for toe hooking, a stiffer, maybe stiffer shoe than on the route, because you don't tend to stay as long in the shoe when you're bouldering compared to sport climbing. And then if you go to crack climbing, you might want to have something which looks like slippers that are very flexible and you can put into the cracks and you can twist them and do all that crazy stuff that you do, but I don't. For example, this shoe doesn't have much rubber at the top, but I like this shoe for sport climbing. If I would need to toe hook a lot, then I would want more rubber at the top of the shoe. So these kind of nuances you will understand as you climb more, so don't worry about that too much. So next piece of gear is so-called a Quickdraw. This is basically a 2 carabiners linked with the sling, and we use the top carabiner to clip to the bolt on the route, and the bottom carabiner to clip the rope.
Why don't you just clip the rope to the carabiner at the bolt?
So you mean, why don't we do this? A short answer is because it can unclip quite easily. And a long answer, I actually made a long video about Quickdraws. So if the only thing I have is carabiners, the amount of angles is gonna be massive, which is gonna create huge friction. I can almost hang on this system. Yeah, I can. By using Quickdraws, we can significantly reduce the friction. See, now I can pull down on this with one finger. And you can watch that to learn all the ways how it can unclip and why the Quickdraw is made the way it's made. I always find it funny that they call it a dog bone, and by dog bone they mean this sling, and I have no clue why it's a dog bone.
Maybe dogs bite it there, I don't know.
You Americans come up with names for things that are... So if you climb inside, you won't need these, because the climbing gyms already have them pre-placed on the wall. If you climb outside, then you will need these. And usually you need between 10 and 15 Quickdraws when you go on the route, depending on where you're climbing and how high the climb is.
Some areas have permanent Quickdraws or permadraws. When does that usually happen?
The permanently placed draws will be in places that are hard to clean the route, meaning the route might get very overhanging and it's quite difficult to take out the Quickdraws from such routes. So in some of these places you will find permanent Quickdraws.
Now if you leave nylon out in the sun, the UV light will degrade this much quicker. Even a year in the sun can make this 10, 20, 30% lower than what it's rated for. And sometimes they're left out in the sun for years and they become kind of sketchy. Permanent Quickdraws really should be made out of steel cable, so they can be basically not degrading from weather.
Knowing how much your gear can hold can make your climbing way more pleasant because you are not afraid. So you broke a lot of Quickdraws. How much do they hold?
The dog boner sling is rated for 22. This carabiner in this case is rated for 26. As long as the carabiner is closed, this is super good enough. Once you get over 10 years old, then we're talking about different stuff, and I've got videos on dog bones that may not break full strength, and you can see all that in those videos.
Would not whip.
Would not whip on that.
This could lift a car. I don't know why that analogy is used because I never lift a car. But
So if it can lift the car,
it might hold you.
it might hold you.
So what side of these goes on the bolt versus the rope?
So the Quickdraw always has a loose carabiner and a carabiner which is more stiff. So the loose carabiner always has to go to the bolt, and that's the carabiner that we usually clip to our harness, because then it's easier to take from the harness and clip to the bolt. Again, the same reason to minimize the chance of the rope unclipping from the rope.
Are you a gate in or a gate out guy?
I am a gate in, but that doesn't matter.
I've tried both, and I do find myself gate out.
You're a gate out.
It is a personal preference whether or not you clip up on the thing until you feel your loop, and then you set it down. That's gate out. Gate in is where you clip it, you feel the tug, and you let go, and it depends how you unclip it, and you can just decide what works best for you. This is super annoying. Do you climb like this with a sling?
Yeah.
Really?
No!
I was like, we are going to mislead so many people. Put it on your harness. So the next piece of gear is the rope. And this is a dynamic rope, which you want to make sure you're not just buying anything on the internet that says rope, but you want to make sure it's a dynamic rope because it needs to catch you. And if it's not catching you softly, it will hurt.
Yeah, basically dynamic climbing ropes are made to elongate or stretch at the perfect elongation, meaning they don't stretch too much because you would just stretch and hit the ground, but they also stretch enough to not cause the forces higher than the back breaking limit, which is actually magical because you can take hundreds of massive falls on a climbing rope and it will still produces soft landing for the climber. This is so fascinating for me.
What millimeter or diameter size do you like of your climbing ropes?
So typically dynamic climbing ropes are between, let's say, 9 and 10 millimeters nowadays, with 9.5 is a good all-round rope, and that's what I use most of the time. You can go to skinnier ropes, but I don't recommend, purely because they don't last as long.
So I like 9.8 millimeter because I want it to last a long time, and I don't mind the extra weight even during climbing. But if you're doing something hard, is the 9.5 easier to handle?
Yeah, basically a lighter rope is a little bit easier to drag across the Quickdraws because it produces slightly less friction. It's less heavy to drag up the route. So there is a benefit of going lighter. Yeah, I wouldn't go below, let's say, 9.5 millimeters on the first rope you own, because that needs to last long. You won't feel a big difference, and it's also a bit more safe because it's less likely to slip from belaying devices unexpectedly.
This is a 40-meter rope, and this is an 80-meter. How long of a rope should you get? Well, it depends where you're climbing. If you're going to be at the climbing gym, ask the gym what size you should have, which is probably more like this. But if you're going to be in Spain, you're definitely going to want something more like this because their routes are almost 40 meters tall and you need 40 meters to get back to the ground. But this is a 70 meter, which I find to be pretty useful in the Washington area where I live now. But when I lived in Yosemite, you don't need more than a 60 meter, and I didn't own anything other than a 60 meter for the first 15 years of my climbing. So just know your area before you go buy your rope.
Some of the ropes have different ratings. They can be single rope, double rope, twin rope. I go into deep details of all of this in my belay masterclass. So twin ropes you clip together, while half ropes you clip separate. And we're gonna rely our lives on a single rope and how hard it is to break a single rope.
Well, it takes a lot of pulling because it stretches a lot before it breaks, but it usually breaks around 14 when you tie a figure eight and you just pull. But Ben is going to be belaying me. It's going to go up through the carabiner and come down to me. And in that configuration, it'll typically break at where the quick draw would be.
The rope is strong enough in a basket that it's stronger than the dog bone itself.
Amazing. Come on. Come on. Yes.
Oh, shit take.
Somebody got a bit of adrenaline.
Yeah, when I actually get quiet, that's when I'm actually scared.
Breaking the rope just by pulling it is really unlikely. The most risky thing is if your rope runs across a sharp edge during the fall. In most places, if the roots are maintained well and bolted well, the bolts are placed in a way that there is little chance of you falling and that the rope would run across a sharp edge.
This is a kern mantle rope, kern mantle, sheath, core. The sheath is meant to be protecting the core. The sheath does do some of the holding, the core does most of it. But just rubbing it a little isn't going to just break it.
Actually, it's pretty hard to break the rope.
It's really hard to break the rope, you shouldn't worry about it.
And in some situations, you can extend quick draws to make the rope to not run across any edges.
If you do run across the edge, you will wear your rope out faster. He put out a video where they tested a clean rope and a dirty rope.
Only a couple of cycles later, and we could already see the core of the rope.
Whoa!
It's very impressive to see the differences.
And how do you keep your rope cleaner? You have a tarp down here.
Yeah, you don't put your rope into the dirt. And to avoid putting the rope into the dirt, usually we have something to put the rope on, and it can be either a rope bag or a tarp.
And you'll
which
tie
is very common.
the bottom into one corner and the top into another?
Yeah, then I put the rope into the rope bag. I tie the ends. If you tie both of the ends to something, that means that there is no possibility to get a knot in the rope. And a knot in the rope would be really bad when you're climbing because that knot will get stuck on a way somewhere. So to avoid that, you tie both of the ropes to the rope bag and then you're sure that there is no knot.
Don't ever do this. This will just create a lot of twists. Let me get your twists out. You want to make more of a butterfly where you stick it in the other hand, put it behind your back. And this is if you're not going to just flake it into a tarp. If your rope is stacked nicely, it will come up nicely. If you're going to coil it, you are going to have to set this down before you start climbing, and you're going to have to flake the rope. Flaking the rope would involve me throwing this on the ground carefully, and then this is flaking the rope where you put it in a nice neat pile. So that way me as the climber is going to tie in right here, and I know that I can go up and he's not going to have a knotted mess to deal with.
The problem sometimes happens that if your rope goes through somewhere, and now if I do this,
That's a problem.
now we have a problem. Because I don't know if I didn't just introduce a knot in there. And now I would have to reflake entire rope.
You might actually have to...
Yeah, I actually have to do this.
I
now.
saw what you did there. Hold on. Rope management is very important. You don't want somebody to be at the crux and you not be able to give them rope as a belayer because you have a big fat knot there.
So the most common knot that we use to tie into the harness is called a figure of 8. And Ryan is gonna demonstrate how great he is with it.
It looks like an 8, and this is half of it. And after you trace the rope through the bottom and then the top part of your harness, so through my legs and then the waist belt, I have to trace this. Like a train track, I am going to follow this to be parallel. That goes through here, I want to go through there. And then it goes around, so I go around. It goes through, that I go through. And so you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So Ben has a video that goes into the depths of the best way to tie this. Even though it all looks like an 8, it all is an 8. One is easier to untie than the other. You can check that out.
18 seconds. I can barely move any of lines.
So this knot is super strong enough, and even if it's not dressed properly, you're still going to get 14 kilonewtons out.
But if you don't dress properly, you will have a hard time untying it.
Yes.
So that's why you want the knot to be dressed well.
So you want your knot dressed. It's just not like you're going to die if you don't. Now, if you have a long tail, you do want a tail that's at least going to fill up your hand if you close your hand. But if you have a long one, you can go around and then back up. And some people call that a backup knot. You don't need a backup knot for the figure 8. Some people might tell you do. You do not.
The biggest risk with having this very long dangling here is that when you will be clipping, you will grab this one, you clip and nothing happens. And I've seen this happening, it's quite funny.
You also don't want to have gaps in here. If you fall and you grab your knot, you don't want your finger to be stuck inside of the knot when it cinches up. So you want to have a well-dressed knot for that. So if I just don't want to have my tail in the way, a great way to do that is to put that backup knot or overhand knot in there, and it'll look something like this. When you take the tail and you flip it around and you put the tail back into the knot, so it's actually the most out of the way, that's called a Yosemite finish, and that gives you the most room right here. You might see that, that's why I bring it up. This is also super good enough. You basically continue to trace the figure 8 and keep it dressed. So it's parallel here, it's parallel here, and the way you can test it is if you pull this strand and this strand, that it maintains its dressed form. Wow, look at all those devices you have. Did you make a belay masterclass or something?
The belayer doesn't want to hold the other end of the rope with his hands, so we use so-called belaying devices. There is many different belaying devices. So originally belaying devices used to be non-locking. They are called tubular devices.
For me to hold that, I'm only using about 6 to 7 kilograms of force on the brake side of the rope.
And they rely purely on friction. If the belayer lets go the brake side of the rope, then the climber is in trouble. These are super good enough for some specific types of climbing. Sometimes in trad you want these. But if you are into sport climbing and you want something which is way more safe than that, then we come into assisted belaying devices.
They don't do it for you entirely. You still have to belay. As assisted as they are, all of them require you to be attentive. Nothing so automatic that you can have your hand free, or to use poor technique where you lift the rope up and then it slides, or push down the camming device. So make sure you go watch where he talks about when the Grigrio slip. I think you've made like 30 of those now.
I managed to make all of them fail. Even the Grigri all the tube-assisted devices, all of them can fail in one way or another. So really highly recommend to watch that video. I know that nobody reads manuals. You have a harness, okay, it's a harness, you can figure out something. Belaying devices are exceptionally important to check. The manuals are made in a way that they have their icons with what not to do. You can just glimpse at that and you will understand, because some of these devices, you might think that you know that it's okay, but it's not.
If the belayer is a lot lighter than the climber, when the climber falls, it could suck the belayer up and the belayer would possibly be going for a ride.
Hey.
If you use a belay resistor like the Zed, it allows the rope to feed smoothly through the device until somebody falls and it gets yanked up, and then it adds a little bend in the rope. And if your weight difference matched the weight settings on this, it should give you a nice soft catch while still not sucking the belayer up into your quick draw.
So how do you navigate all the videos that Hard is Easy and I have made? Let me show you how to find videos instead of just linking 100 of them in the description below. With zero search history, you can type in the channel and what you want to see, and that should bring up ATC related videos from Ben. If there's anything you're curious if I've tested, you just type in how not to, the item, and it should bring up anything I've ever done for that. It could even be something super weird like rappel rings, and it should bring up the main rappel ring video. We have a video where we've done rappel rings, all the shorts I've done with rappel rings, and all the rappelling videos I've done. Now, to navigate hownotto.com, we did organize the mega menu by climbing, caving, and canyoning. So you can go to climbing and find all your hardware and soft goods here. And if you're confused about what to get, because there's a lot to look at, we did make a sport climbing gear guide specifically for people who are watching this video. Pick your category and go to helmets, and it'll be the cheapest one, it'll be the most popular one, and it'll be the one that we recommend. Now, I prefer to show what I'm trying to teach instead of talk to you about it. So let's go out to Real Rock and give you an example, A to Z, of going out for a sport climb.
If this is the first time you've gone outside and you're not with somebody who knows what they're doing, which you should be, the best place to start would be simulating a top rope. This is going to be best if you can access, obviously, the top without having to climb up to it. And where I am right now, you can do that. And I don't want to be near a cliff edge without being tied in. Now, if these are rings, or in this case, these are permanent carabiners, you can put your rope directly in that, but you're going to wear out the hardware. So it's best to wear out your own gear and then rappel on this as the final thing, or to pull your rope down. You don't want to just use these as your top rope carabiners, because they'd wear out, this is expensive, and it's a lot of work to maintain an entire area. So what I have is, you can use any Quickdraws, but these are bulletproof for metal rid. And it has a little steel insert here, so they'll last longer, and these are dedicated for us when we set stuff up like this. I put one Quickdraw underneath the quick link here, directly into the bolt. I do the same thing there. You'll notice that these are not locking carabiners. That's okay if you have two of them, and when you put them together, the gates are opposite and opposed. So now I can put my rope in there. Now I'm gonna lower it a little bit, and then I'm going to clip it into one, clip it into the other, and that sits super good enough. My rope is not rubbing on any of the rocks. If you need to set up an anchor that's different or extended because the bolts are back here and they don't quite go over the edge, you don't want your rope going over the edge up here, because that's obviously bad for your rope. Once that's on the ground, I can see that's touching the ground now. So I'm gonna start lowering this side, but it's just gonna keep lowering on this other side if I don't hang on to this. So once it has enough weight, then I can do that. And now I've set up a top rope, and I can get good at this route before I try leading it, especially if you're a new leader. Now, you never know who's below you, even though I can see what's going on. You always yell, "Rope!" before ever tossing a rope. Don't ever try walking away unless you've unclipped yourself first. So we're down at the bottom now, and we're gonna basically do what you learned going to a climbing gym first, where you drop that much and you're gonna tie your figure 8 with the first part like that, through the leg section, through the waist section, so 2 points on your harness. You're going to make all these strands parallel, and you're gonna make that knot 1 fist away from your harness. You don't want it sticking way out. Goes around, you go around. It goes through here, you go through here. You don't need to back this up. This is a very secure knot the way it is, but I don't want to have a bunch of tail here. Go around, rabbit goes back up the tree, or you can do a Yosemite finish, and you can loosen that up a little bit. and continue your figure 8 one last time so the tail is coming down, and then your knot is super good enough. One fun thing you can do is you can tie in again to the bottom of the rope. I'm gonna mock lead. I'm gonna pretend to lead while I'm safe on a top rope. That's what's keeping me safe, and this is gonna dangle below me, and I'm gonna mock lead. I'm gonna clip my Quickdraws to the bolts. I'm gonna clip this to the Quickdraws, and no one's belaying this end. This is what's keeping me safe. Rocky talkie. Even though this is short, the road noise is pretty loud. It's pretty nice to always be able to at least talk to your partner to clearly communicate, not go, wah, wah. I'm ready to climb.
I'm ready to belay. You're locked and loaded.
And then I'm gonna communicate that I'm going to climb. Climbing.
Climb on.
I don't have my shoes on. But my audio's finally on this time. Harness is properly tightened. You're
Doubled back.
double backed.
Yep, no
All right.
danger symbol.
Now I'm climbing for real.
All right.
I clipped my first draw, and it's so weird not having somebody belay that in, but that's great practice. On this lap, I'm gonna show you kind of the technique of climbing. You wanna stay balanced. I don't have a solid right foot, but it keeps me balanced, and I can pull on this. Now, it's not like a jug, it's more of a pull, and I wanna pull this way, which means I can't have both my feet over here. I gotta have my feet pulling me in that way, and it's a dynamic move, so I don't hang out here too long. And then I get to this good one. And oftentimes you'll get to rest. Most climbs, you'll have something you got to work through, and then you get to rest, and you want to utilize those. You want to shake it out if you need to chalk up, or in this case, I'm going to clip my next bolt. Now, you don't want to clip above your head if you don't have to, because that means you're at risk of falling further. But in this case, I'm so comfortable, that's a better option for me. So for here, there's a couple ways to do this. There's no good foot ledge anymore. And so you can kind of do this, and then you're kind of like mantling, and then you're like beach whaling this. Instead, you can make your motion a little bit more fluid. So I have a little finger pull here and a finger pull here. I don't have to have something great on my foot, but my foot is between my two arms, and then I just pull up like this. This is the slackliner in me. If your weight's above your heel, you can just stand up. You don't have to have something bomber, but I got something to grab here. And then you can stand up with your feet. So rocks are a lot more featured than you might think. Like this little edge here is a large foothold for harder climbs. But when you're on an easier 5/8, and 5/8s are different everywhere around the world. This has a nice jug right here for me to grab. I can stand up high, and ideally, you're not clipping above your head, but I'm so comfortable right now that it's not a risk. So I'm going to put my left foot on this larger edge, and I'm staying balanced. So I don't want to just be pulled up and be like, oh shit, I don't know what to do. I'm just grabbing stuff. Be intentional about it. I see that there's another edge right here. And so I'm going to put my left foot there, my right foot there, my right hand here. Now I don't want to pull straight down on this. I'm pulling sideways on it. And that allows me to put my foot here, and I pull myself in to stand up on that. And it's just a balance game. So my next move, I've got a couple jugs here. If I want to pull sideways more, if I grab this, I can jam my finger in there, go like that. I stay balanced. And when I step up, I'm gonna step over here, switch my hands, come over here, stand up, and now I'm pretty much able to reach the anchor here. And this is where I tell Derek, take. That means he knows to make me tight. Now, if I was on lead, I would put my Quickdraws up there now instead of having done it before, clipped my rope into my stuff, and then on the very last thing we'll show you when it's time to clean up, but you want to wear out your gear. Ready to lower. Don't forget to clean up when you're done. Let's say I'd led that and he's lowering me. Keep going. I can clip one of these bolts since this is very diagonal. And then when he lowers me, it's lowering more straight down to where I'm actually going to be climbing. So that way I don't risk having a big old swing off to the side. Okay, on the ground. And you want to communicate that your feet are on the ground, because if they think you're close and you're going to step down to the next boulder and they just drop you because they think you're done, that's where you can like hurt yourself. When you're belaying, you never want to let go with this hand. Ever. You can scratch your eye, just never let go with this hand. And as he goes up, I have to keep pulling slack, right? And so there's a couple ways to do it, and we're going to talk about those while he's climbing. So tell me you're ready.
All right, I'm ready. I'm tied in.
Checking his harness, checking his knot. 2, 4, 6, 8. Yosemite finish. Helmet, shoes. He's got a shoe problem too. That is the risk you run climbing easy stuff, is you might forget to put on your climbing shoes. Now this is an assisted braking device, not a do everything for you device. So you always have to still hang on to the brake strand. You never want to hang on to this unless you're just using it to pull it down. You never want to have slack in this, because when they go to fall, this is gonna burn your hand. This is the Black Diamond grid lock. You put that on your belay loop first, click it into place so it can't cross load. Then you put the hand and the man in your belay device, which always has an image there so you can't get that mixed up. And I'm going to clip that and I'm going to lock it. And now I check it. So now that he has climbing shoes on and I've got the device in the way I want, then I think we're good to go.
Yep, ready to climb.
Your harness looks good, your knot looks good, and you got your climbing shoes on.
Climbing shoes,
And
ready to go.
the audio's working.
Ready.
Ready.
To climb.
Climb on.
All right, climbing.
So I want to not come up like this, slide my hand down and brake, because what'll happen is while it's in go mode, there's no friction here. It doesn't engage the cam. He's climbing. This is called P-bus, where you pull, brake, under, slide. And it's kind of slow if he's in a hurry, which he is, but it works. Another thing you can do is, instead of coming up, bringing this hand up to here, you can bring this hand down to here, because if it comes up, then this hand is still in the braking position. So notice I don't grab here and then come here in order to brake. You don't do this. Especially don't do it up in this position. If he wasn't on a ledge right now, I wouldn't be doing that for you. You want to make sure you never let go with this strand. Climb slower. So let's say he's struggling. I can get on my tippy toes, I can pull this strand, and I can sit, and I can hold his weight, and I can tunnel, which means I'm just sitting. Usually I can still hang on here, but it can tunnel my hand because I'm not letting go and it's still in the braking position. And I can go like this. But those are for short motions. If he's got a lot of slack in the system, tunneling's a little weird. You don't really want to do that, because you always want to make sure you got a good handle on this Quickdraws brake. Any device you have requires you to hang on to the brake strand. I won't drop you. Words you never want to hear while you're hanging on. You never want to hang on. Pretend my hand is not hanging on to this. You never want to hang on to this, because you pull on this, I've disengaged the lock, right? And if this was not, if I wasn't hanging on to this, you don't trust me. So if there was slack here, I'm dropping him. You don't hang on to this. The other thing you don't want to do is to pull this down like this, because if he were to fall right now, it would rip. I'm glad I lifted my hand up first. That would have burned my hand. Ben's got a lot of videos about that. So make sure you respect this and only use it as a tool to pull some slack out of the system. Good timing. So I can tunnel there. I'll P-bus there. I'll bring this to there. There are lots of ways that people are going to disapprove of the way I'm showing you. But the idea is you don't let go with that hand. So he said lower, so I'm going to lower him by taking the handle on the Quickdraws, which gives me leverage on the camming device. You don't want to go straight in. That will twist the shit out of your rope. Quickdraws will already twist the shit out of your rope. You want it to go over this edge that it's designed for. And you're hanging on with this, and you're controlling this like brake, gas. You want to really have control. I like to be lowered slowly. Some people don't mind going fast. You want to communicate with your climber on what they prefer. Go the speed they like. The thing you don't want to do is to be inconsistent, because he's about to go over a lip right now. And if I was going to stop, go, he would like jump down right now and hit his shins all over that thing. But if I was consistent, he can gauge on when to step down, and he can be controlled the whole time. Now what you don't want to do is be like, oh, he's close, and then just go boom and let him go. You want to wait till he's not on that rock, but until he tells you he's on his own feet.
Good.
Yep. Because if I thought he was going to stop there, but he wants to step back here, and I let him go, he'll probably start falling down the mountain and maybe roll an ankle or something. So you're good? Give you some slack. Good job.
Sweet.
Crushed it.
Oh, sweating bullets up there.
Do you have a fun story for us?
Yeah, so one time back in college in Alabama, we were on a school trip, and two people who were not familiar with outdoor climbing snuck off to go belay each other. And the belayer was holding the top side of the belay device and not the break end. And the climber made it successfully to the top, but when he leaned back to get lowered, the rope ripped through the belayer's hand, burned him, fell all the way to the ground. We heard the screaming as the whiplash as he slammed into the ground. I turned and I was like, oh crap, he's dead. And then he made some groaning noises and I was like, wow, he's not dead, but he did break both of his legs.
What happened is they're holding just enough because they're falling. Like your firmware in your brain says, hang on, which is not allowing the rope to go fast enough to engage that camming device. Or what's worse, is we'll show you during leading, is you hold with your thumb down the camming device. There's a lot of ways to screw up an assisted device. Okay, I'm going to pull the rope now. That means I'm leaving the Quickdraws up there, but I'm going to be climbing back up to them, so that's okay in this case. There is no knot at the end of this rope, and you really want to make sure of that before you pull this down, because it would get stuck up there. Right before it starts falling, you yell to your camera girl, rope. Cool. You want to make sure that it's flaked nicely so he's not fighting the rope while he's belaying me. And then we do what looks familiar, tie in. So I want to make sure I have enough Quickdraws, plus if I haven't already set up the anchor, something to set up the anchor. In this case, it would be 2 more Quickdraws, but we don't need that. The loose side of the carabiner is the side that goes in the bolt. I'm going to want that on the top part of my harness, and I want to make sure these are all ready to go before I need them. So I've got 4 on either side. It's nice to have them on both sides because I don't know which hand I might want to be hanging onto the wall with. It's nice to have a personal anchor if I want to clip to the anchors up there in order to clean that, which we'll cover later. And so I'm going to just wrap that around me. So I don't have any unnecessary things on me, and I've got my climbing shoes on. And I'm going to still do the same checks all over again.
Right.
Your harness is on right.
Harness is on right.
Carabiner.
Locked into the carabiner. Rope's going through the beaner and the ATC.
Cool. Got figure 8 with Yosemite finish, 2 points. Harness is auto locking. I'm going to tuck this in here. Climbing.
All right, climb on.
Now we've already established that this rope is long enough for this pitch. But if you just showed up and you're going to lead, you always want to have a knot in the end of this side of the lead rope. Just do a stopper knot, and that way it gets stuck in his belay device if he's lowering me after I clip to the anchor and I come down. If the rope's not long enough, the rope would come through his belay device and I would be free falling that last section, potentially rolling down a hill or breaking my ankles. It happened to Alex Honnold because they had, I believe, a 60 meter on a pitch they needed a 70 meter for. Another trick you can do if your feet are dirty is wipe them on your pants as you go up. And now my feet don't feel like roller skates. Now, one thing that Derek can do, if this was a sketchy start, it's not, is he can do what you would do for somebody bouldering. He'd have his hands up and he would guide me if I were to fall. Not catch me, but make sure my head doesn't hit that before my feet hit the ground at least. So, but I'm gonna get right up here and I can touch the bolt and I'm safe and solid, so I'm not gonna try to stand up right next to it. So I'm gonna clip. Sometimes I like to tell my belayer that I'm clipped so they can pull the rope a little tighter, because if they do that and I haven't clipped yet, it'll probably rip it out of my hands. I also want the rope to be, if he's gonna stand there, in between my legs, because if I fall, I don't want to hit my shins, then the rope is going to be clean the whole time. Let's talk about different ways of clipping. I like to put the spine of the carabiner in the direction that I'm going, because if it lifts up, it's not going to hit anything, unclip anything. But if I put the gate on this side, if it comes up like this and it's loose, it could get stuck on that notch come down and then you're in a cross-loaded situation, which we have a video on how much lower of a strength that is. And the other thing it can do is if you pull it up hard enough, it can hit the other side, especially on a glue-in. Nothing to be concerned about, just put your spine on that side. This side doesn't matter, but you don't want to back clip. How do you do it wrong? You don't want to do this, mostly because I'm going that direction. Give me a little slack, I'm solid. Because if you go up like this and come down, it'll unclip itself. So I want it to be in direct. If I fell, I'm going to be in this position where the rope comes up along the rock and comes out to me. And so you want to clip it in that orientation. There's a couple different ways you can clip this. And if I'm hanging on to my left, I'm coming up with my right, then I'm going to want to grab with my middle finger to stabilize it, lift it up, clip it in there. The other thing you can do is keep it in your thumb here, and you can squeeze the carabiner in order to get it in there. And you've got your 4 fingers on the spine and you close it on there. If I'm hanging on with this hand, I just grab the whole carabiner and I squeeze it open and I put it in there. There's several different ways to do that. Just practice at home, and you're not gonna always be this comfortable when you're trying to clip. You're gonna be like this, and you're gonna be like this, and you're gonna be stressed out, and then you're gonna be like, shit! Seriously, you wanna be very good at this. Can you tell I've done that before? So you also, if the bolts are close enough, which is oftentimes in a gym, you wanna grab down here and clip, because I'm gonna go nowhere fast. I am now Z-clipped. When I try to climb up this, it goes up, down, and up. That is how his ATC works. That's a lot of friction. You don't want to zigzag. So you're constantly playing a math game while you're climbing, and you have to be able to understand how far you're going to fall while you're trying not to think about falling and actually enjoying the climb. If I am 2 feet above this piece, I'm at risk falling 2 feet plus 2 feet plus rope stretch plus belayer's reaction time plus how much I pull them up if they're lighter than me and they get pulled up a little bit, which is nice for a softer catch, but you got to think about how far away the ground is. So if I were to clip above my head too high, I'm introducing a lot more rope into an equation that gets big fast. And so you just want to be mindful when you're climbing about where you are in space, and learn to take a couple whippers when you're high enough, where your feet are at the quick draw, so you can learn what a fall looks like, and when you're down lower, that you can trust your belayer, you can trust the situation, you can trust the bolts. So let's continue climbing. So let's talk about footwork real quick, where my feet are in relationship to the rope. You don't want your foot behind this thing like this, because if you fall, it's gonna flip you upside down, which is one reason you have a helmet. It's not just for things falling and hitting your head. As tempting as it is to clip up here, it's actually not any riskier for me to just climb up to here, because I actually have less rope in the system when I do that than if I were to lift it above my head. He had to give me less rope through his belay device in order for me to do that. So you technically would probably fall further because you're up higher, but you're not going to end up lower. And that's the concern, is that you're too low and you end up hitting the ground or something. Notice my feet are on either side of the rope right now. And when I transition to this side, now the rope's on my left side, because I don't want to get entangled in the rope. If I don't have good rope management and my foot's here and I take a whipper, I'm gonna flip backwards and I'm gonna hit my head on that wall. You want it to look like this because that's the orientation in which you're going to fall. Now that that risk is gone. Now it is nice to learn that you can trust your gear, your rope, the bolt, and the stuff. So sometimes you can just take a whipper. Oh, that takes a minute to get used to. Even as a guy who likes to jump off cliffs. And then you get a lot more confident because you learn you can trust all the gear. Because once you can trust all the gear and you're not afraid of falling, that is when you actually get better. Oh, that gets you going. Better than Wheaties in the morning, baby. Oh man, that freeway noise is so loud, and this was such a long pitch. Lower. So we're gonna take the knot out of this. Then I can pull the rope down and Derek can climb next. And before it starts to fall, I yell, rope. I'm the hand, you're the man. Put in there. Double check. So belaying's gonna be a little bit different in this case because I have to feed him slack as he's clipping and also take in slack if he clipped above his head. So we're gonna cover that. Climb on. Now, there's no reason to not have a ton of rope out in this situation, but in order to help guide him if he were to slip. Once he's clipped in, then I have a different job. There's a lip underneath this gree-gree that helps me hold it up. If he ever were to fall, this is always in my hand and it's always gonna get locked up. When I see him reach for the rope, I feed him just enough. I can step a little closer and he's good. I can pull in some of the slack if I want. And there's a little bit of slack here because you don't want to give him too hard of a catch. You want to have just a little bit of a soft catch, and you could also do a soft hop. And I don't want to be way back there and get pulled into the rock, which means I could let go and put my hands in front so I don't smack, and you don't want to let go. So I kind of want to have my foot up here. I want to be poised and ready, and I could take a catch if I need to. As soon as he stands up, you don't want to short rope him, which I'm going to try to short rope him very gently here. That's short roping. He's pulling and it's stuck, and then I got to like do this and get it down, and then you lose friends that way. Either you pulled him off and you killed him, or he just doesn't want to be your friend anymore. I like to go out like this every so often, and then belay, and then check to make sure like I like how much is available to me for the next section. And that's being attentive and being prepared for the next thing. So if he was right over a ledge, I would be more willing to give him a harder catch because that would be less painful than him actually hitting the rock. So you have to decide which is the lesser of two evils. So now I got you. Again, this is going to be the same as top roping, is you gently pull on this. You don't want to grab it and just go, woo! You don't want to open it all the way and use your hand if you don't have to. You want to let the camming unit do some of it, and you want your hand to do most of it. And you want it to be consistent. And you want to look down and make sure the rope's not clustered. Look up to make sure he's not coming up over a lip, and go. Check the rope, check him. And when he gets on the ground, good.
Super good.
Cool. You're off. It's not rocket science.
No, it's not.
Just don't let go.
All right, sometimes on routes, the first bolt might be very high, or potentially even the crux might be before the first bolt. You might elect to use a stick clip. So you can use these devices to hold the carabiner, and that has these clips to retain the gate open. And then once you have it set up like this, we'll clip the rope through, and then we can extend this. And this will allow us to hook on and clip that first bolt. So I'm gonna go ahead and pay out a good bit of slack so that I can still reach the rope once I clip it, so that I can tie into my harness. This will be my climber side. It's gonna come out of the gate when I hook it from the right. Extend this as far as it'll go. There we go.
Oh, that looks safer.
And now I can just tie in as normal. And while you're making your way up to the first bolt, you'll essentially be on a little top rope and can feel safe about doing that crux. Harness looks good, connected, tied.
You look good.
You're locked, gree-gree, facing the correct direction.
Checked.
All right, I think we're ready to go.
Okay.
Climbing.
Climb on.
All right, ready to lower.
Gotcha.
All right, on the ground.
All right, you're off.
So I'm going to be the last person to climb up, and I'm going to clean the anchor.
Okay, now that I got up to the top of the anchor, I'm going to show you how to clean it. I'm going to take a personal anchor, and I'm going to clip this in here. And this is what's going to hold me. Pull it tight. I'm comfortable in the stance. I'm in my personal anchor, or I'm clipped in is something you could say. And I need to get this rope into the permanent hardware so he can lower me. And what I do is I always make sure if I'm cleaning, if I came up here after the leader, or if I'm done top roping, that I haven't pulled out all of the quick draws. I want to leave one below me in case I totally goof up here. I'm still on belay and I would take a whipper. That's important when you're untying yourself from the rope, that you don't mess this up. Now, these are permanent steel carabiners. In theory, You can do this, take your hardware off. I would take these off and we're good to go. But if these are rappel rings and I can't open these, I'm gonna show you how to do that. Now, I don't wanna untie in order to thread it through without having the rope tied to me first. And one thing you can do is get a little slack here. That's called a bight of rope. And you can thread it through the rings or the quick links, whatever's in here. And you can grab enough slack here and you can tie a figure 8. You can take a locking carabiner and you can clip it to your belay loop and you're in to that. Now that the rope is clipped to me, not only clipped to me, but already threaded through, I am still safe on my rope and I'm still safe on my personal anchor, so I always have two things going for me. I can untie and take it off my harness. Pull this up, pull that out, take the knot out, pull it through, and pull it through the rings. It's okay to have a little bit of loop here. If you don't want that, you can tie it off or something. I'm gonna take my Quickdraws now. And I can stand up a little, lean back. Now, if I have the Quickdraw down there and I've untied myself completely and I unclip this, I'm still gonna die. You wanna be safe the whole time. Now, I can grab this and I can take this and I can unclip this and lean backwards. That's crazy. On rappels, lowers, anything, that's crazy. Extend this out and say, take, okay. Now I know it's holding me. Or if you're on rappel, now you know you're on rappel. Then with this, with this loose, then you take it off because you know this is all good. Please be safe. This is actually quite dangerous. And I actually like the pig's tails or ram's horn method that Bobby and I tested out at the lab, where you just clip the rope inside of it like Bobby shows in that video.
Super simple to thread these. You just go behind one side and then go behind the other side, and it sits in this basket.
Unweighted, you just lift it away from the rock. But once it's weighted, the rope can't jump out. No! No! I saw plywood fly everywhere. Did it just pound this into my slack set machine? There's a lot of ways to skin this cat. I definitely like the open systems I can just clip my rope in or connect my rope to without having to untie anything. But if you have to, it's not the end of the world. But I wanted to make sure you saw that. Please go with somebody who knows what they're doing. Lower. Something I want to cover, if you can't take a bite of rope and easily feed it into something, you just can't get it in there, you have to untie before you can feed it in. But you can still be safe. On this side of this, same thing, is you temporarily do this and clip in with a locking carabiner. So I'm still in there. And now when I untie this, I'm still on here, locked. And now I can take this end and I could feed it through, let's say the chains is what is all I have to work with. And then I just tie in like I was before and undo my knot. Double check myself. There, unclip that, grab my stuff. Don't leave your stuff behind. So now I'm through the 2 points. I'm in there. Take. Don't get your hands smashed and stuff. Loose. You got me? I can take this off and I can go down. And I know that I'm in solid before I take that off. And as I go down, I just take my Quickdraw out.
So we're trying to answer every question about gear that people trust with their life, and 100% of our information is 100% free, and we like to put these comprehensive videos together, trying to introduce people to these sports that may never have done them before. We have an intro to ice climbing video with 4 guides in Iceland. We have a 14 video series if you are interested in big walling. We have an entire canyon course that consists of more than a dozen videos now. And if you are going to trust your life to bolts, it's nice if you take an hour or two to understand what you are clipping by reading the Bolting Bible, which also has over 100 videos linked in there that we have made and have tested bolts in.
Can you see it?
Okay. Oh, the slow-mo is incredible.
And at hownoto.com, I try to carry everything you're going to need for climbing, caving, and canyoning. And if you can get your gear there, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Cheers.